You can watch Arsenal versus Burnley and Man City versus Crystal Palace on Now TV for just €10. So what's stopping you? Putting up more Christmas decorations? Your house already looks like Santa's grotto. A family party? Your Aunt Mary has seen you 4 times this week already. Don't let anything get in your way. To treat yourself to a Now TV Sky Sports Day Pass and watch the games that matter to you for just €10, search Now TV Football today. Content streamed by internet. Full terms at nowtv.com.
Previously on Coffee with Kenobi.
I found myself coming away from the trailer just excited and happy. And it's funny because I found maybe a little silly to admit this, but I drove to work kind of in the mindset of Han racing through the streets of some, dirty city, looking to, escape somewhere. I found myself putting myself in his shoes. And
This is James Arnold Taylor, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi. I have a good feeling about this.
Hello and welcome to show number 109 of Coffee with Kenobi, your spoiler-free place for Star Wars discussion, analysis, and rhetoric. I'm your host, Dan Z, with a fresh brew of coffee here in a Coffee with Kenobi mug. Thank you so much for joining me today as we sit back and have some Star Wars conversation. We hope to make you think about the mythology of Star Wars in a whole new way, and maybe laugh a little bit in the process. On today's show, Jason Fry and Lindsey Romain join us as we look back at some of the backlash regarding recent Star Wars news and try to come to some sort of understanding and figure out what both sides are talking about. Tom has the latest Star Wars news, and in the coffee chat, the Solo trailer. What makes it Star Wars? The essence of Star Wars. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi.
And now, let's see what's brewing in the Star Wars universe this week.
Before we start the show, I want to thank Cufflinks.com for the Star Wars ties that they sent me recently. I got a BB-8 orange and blue paisley tie and a gray kind of silver porg tie. I've worn them at school. I've worn them to some different events that I host, and they're great looking ties. And I think one of the things I like so much about them is the fact that, for one, it's a Star Wars tie, so that's great right away. But two, they're so discreet and classy and subtle that you wouldn't necessarily know that it was a Star Wars tie. And then as you get closer and people notice them, that opens the door to a lot of great conversation. So that's really fun. Thank you again to Cufflinks for that. Be sure to check out the banner on our webpage because they are an affiliate of ours. Speaking of our website, as you probably know, we have some banners on our site where you can find links to Coffee with Kenobi t-shirts, mugs, cell phone covers, all kinds of great stuff. And this is all because of TeePublic, which is the company we use to sell our merchandise. Now, recently, I have been made aware that there are a couple of websites out there that are selling Coffee with Kenobi t-shirts, and they are not from TeePublic, which means they are not affiliated with Coffee with Kenobi or myself, and they don't support the show. So they're counterfeit. Please, if you want to buy a Coffee with Kenobi t-shirt or mug, go to our website in the banner or go to TeePublic and type in Coffee with Kenobi, and you will find that is the only place to get Coffee with Kenobi merchandise that is officially sanctioned by our show. Now let's transition to something that definitely is the real deal through and through. Harry's Razors. What do I love about Harry's Razors? Well, honestly, the shave is great. I love the feel of the razor that they send. The shaving gel is great. It's just very convenient, very easy, and very affordable. Harry's is all about a great shave at a fair price, which is why over 3 million guys have switched to Harry's. Jeff and Andy are two ordinary guys who were fed up with getting charged an arm and a leg for razor blades, so they started Harry's to fix shaving. And Harry stripped out the unnecessary features like a vibrating handle, heating blades, 15 lubricated strips, etc., and the unnecessary cost to deliver customers one perfect razor at an amazing price. A good shave honestly comes down to good blades, as you know, so Harry's owns this factory, which is great, because that means they're able to deliver amazing quality blades for just $2 a blade compared to the $4 or more you're going to pay at the drugstore. And all products are backed by a 100% quality guarantee. Harry's is so confident you're going to love their blades, they're going to give you their trial shave set for free when you sign up for Harry's at harrys.com/CWK family. Claim your free trial offer from Harry's today. A $13 value for free when you sign up. Just cover that $3 shipping. Your free trial set includes a weighted ergonomic razor handle, 5 precision engineered blades with a lubricating strip and trimmer blade, rich lathering shave gel, which I mentioned before, smells really, really good, lathers up great, and a travel blade cover. To get your free trial set, go to harrys.com/CWK family right now. That's harrys.com/CWK family.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first?
Joining us today for a cup of coffee is a Star Wars author, my favorite Mets baseball fan, and an all-around awesome guy, Jason Fry.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
You bet, you bet. Good to have you back on the show again. Also joining us is a cultural writer for multiple outlets, including Thrillist, Slash Film, Nerdist, and Teen Vogue, Lindsey Romain.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being on the show. We're glad to have you both on for a cup of coffee. We're going to go ahead and start the first segment here on something I like to call fan anxiety. You're both very, active on Twitter, as am I, and I'm sure you both have noticed that, especially recently with the news of the Han Solo, well, not the news so much as the trailer of Solo, and then the news of what's going on with the Game of Thrones creators, well, I feel like we have quite a bit more Star Wars fan anxiety than usual. Do either of you have any kind of theories about why that might be?
I do a little bit. I think some of it, there's been some writing and whatnot about that this week specifically. I think a lot of it might have to do with the amount of Star Wars that we're getting right now. We went from having 3 movies spaced out amongst decades, to suddenly there's so much going on in the world. And I think that might stress fans out a little bit, just not, knowing what to make of that, because it's a lot all at once. So that's been kind of my theory on why there's so much to say about what's going on in the world right now. The world of Star Wars, I mean.
Sure. Oh, for sure. Jason, what about you?
Yeah, I think Lindsey's right. There's a lot to be said for that. We're still kind of getting used to this new rhythm of Star Wars, definitely. Another thing I think of a lot is just, we're all kind of still working through how this always-on digital world works, and we kind of haven't figured it out. One of the things I try very hard to remember on Twitter is that, for myself and for others, is that, you don't have to have an opinion. You're allowed to have an opinion and change your mind. You're allowed to say things like, I don't know, I've never thought about it, or I got to think about that one. And, there's just this weird pressure to have an instant opinion. And then there's also this weird pressure to, that kind of snap opinion is the hill that you're going to die on. And I don't think either one of them is good for our discourse or our mental health or anything else. So I'm trying more and more just to kind of resist that pressure personally, and and when I see it, and it's okay just to watch the Solo trailer or hear a news report, which is honestly nothing more than these 2 dudes are working on stories, and say, okay, well, let's see what that means in a couple of months or a couple of years.
I agree. Yeah, wisely said. To me, and I put this on Twitter as well, I believe very much in critical thinking and intellectual honesty. I think discourse is a wonderful part of fandom, and I think that's how we can learn and grow and get ideas from each other. But to automatically jump to a place where something is bad or negative and there's this angst about how Star Wars is supposedly taking a turn for the worse, I find that to be, I'm a very positive guy, but after a while that becomes a little bit draining after a while, because I just don't understand where that would come from. There have been not everything has been, great. I mean, if everything is great, then nothing is great, to be honest, but everything has been really strong, and there haven't been any missteps in the cinematic avenues, I don't believe. I mean, financially, you certainly couldn't argue with it. So to suddenly think it's going to fall, and it's hard not to look at Marvel as the sort of the gold standard of how to do something like this. And the nice thing about Marvel is that while they have many different franchises going on and they tie together, they're all very much have a different feel to them.
To go back to the Twitter reaction to that a little bit, because I can come from that from kind of a different side, which is that I do feel like I say a lot on Twitter sometimes, maybe before I even think it through. Admittedly, I'm one of the
that was fun.
Yeah, I think sometimes, I am a very reactive person. I try to be at least aware of what I'm saying. I don't want to just like immediately fire off, but I think, what it comes down to, at least if you're comparing it to Marvel a little bit, is some of the anxiety from Star Wars fans I've noticed, myself included, is that there might be a little bit of fear that it's not going the Marvel route of every film feels very distinctive, where it feels like maybe they're trying to be a little too safe. I think that can be some of it. At least my reaction after seeing the Solo trailer was like, oh, this looks a lot like Rogue One, which obviously did very well for them financially and, critically and everything. And with the Game of Thrones guys coming aboard too, this sort of feeling of safety a little bit, I think it has caused some fan anxiety on the opposite realm of like, it's not getting too crazy, it's maybe being too safe. So I think there's a lot of different things going into that.
The great irony for me was always when The Force Awakens came out, and there was a lot of consternation that it was too much like A New Hope. And then when The Last Jedi came out, it wasn't enough like The Empire Strikes Back. that kind of makes me
absolutely.
It's very
absolutely.
Opposite.
That's what we do as fans, though. We fight the last battle. I mean, we all do it. I also think, I'm super old, and I was just remembering the run-up to Return of the Jedi, of all things, where, we had, the usual kind of brace of pictures that you had to guess from. And, I'm pretty sure my friends and I freaked out about, is that the first Death Star and it's kind of in ruins? And what does that mean? And, some of these new aliens look weird, and Chewie's hairstyle is different. And, I'm sure we all kind of lost our minds about that because we didn't have any information to go on except, the difference was we were doing that out by the swings. And it wasn't visible, it wasn't forever. And, it was just a void we filled and it was harmless. But now, you're on the record forever, or at least you feel like it. And I don't know. I feel like on my hopeful days we'll all work this out in a while, whether it's, that was my first reaction, so what? Or, or some other way of dealing with it. But right now we've got a ways to go, and that's where the angst comes from. At least I think so.
True. Oh, I agree. Yeah. Now, and on all this, very, very true, very valid. And now the next aspect of this, I think, perhaps is a bit of a different approach, and that is the outcry from a select minority of folks that are upset that Alden Ehrenreich does not look like Harrison Ford.
It would be so much worse if he was trying to do some kind of cheap imitation of Han Solo. I think that would be the worst thing they could do. I mean, I think as fans, we have to accept that there are going to be different iterations of these characters. It's nothing new in film. And I think that's something with Star Wars we have to stop being so precious about. There's different ways to interpret a character and different ways to look like a character and whatever. And it's like, if you're okay with an animated character, you should be okay with a different actor playing a character too. So that's kind of where I come down with it.
Yeah. I mean, James Bond,
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And also, again, it's the kind of big reaction to a little bit of information we have, maybe 12, 15 words we've heard from Alden. That's not the way an actor creates a character. So, it's not that long. We'll get the whole thing, and, then we can freak out and overreact. So, I don't know. But it's
well, it also...
Random. I do it too.
Yeah, and nothing that he's going to do is going to erase what Harrison Ford did. I think people might be a little afraid of that, but it doesn't change who Han Solo is to us or whatever. It's just a different interpretation of that. So I think that's something people get a little precious about, again, is holding close to their darlings. And it's it's okay if there's a different version of it. It does not erase what came before. So
true. And I completely understand it and respect the how sacrosanct Harrison Ford and / Han Solo is for people. I completely get that. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But, when I saw the trailer the first time, I thought, okay, he's got the walk. He's kind of got that swagger. You can tell he's a little uncertain because this is an older incarnation of Han Solo, or a younger, to be more accurate. And to me, that's the key stuff. As long as he gets those beats, those rhythms, because he's learning, he's growing how to be the character that he's ultimately going to be by the time we see him in The Force Awakens. By then he's gone through a number of other changes too. So the most important thing is we've got the Falcon, right, Jason?
Oh yeah, always have the Falcon. Yeah, the Falcon is just so far and away my favorite thing in Star Wars. So any excuse to watch the Falcon do stuff, I'll be there.
How much did you love, both of you, seeing the pristine hallway of the Falcon in that shot?
I had kind of a weird reaction to that where I was like, wow, Han Solo, you're gross if you let it get that nasty in like 10 years. Not that it doesn't look cool, but I'm like, what happened that it got that bad so fast? But yeah, it's always cool to see like kind of the prototype of this thing that you love that's in shabbier condition eventually. That's the part of the trailer I think I got the most goosebumps from, was just seeing the Falcon in that way.
Yeah, I generally, how to put this? I generally am not a huge fan of when storytelling fills in stuff so that you see kind of a classic line differently. And generally that feels a little meta, but it is true that now, I mean, you know, from like, as Lindsey puts it, from like Han Solo obviously being like sort of a horrible space pig or something, like now Lando's line of "What have you done to my ship?" is suddenly really kind of funny. Like, where does it start? So I don't know.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that. That's a good point. Maybe that wasn't the first time a Rathtar was around the Falcon. Maybe it's not in there.
It does make you think of like what has been on here that's made it this like rusty and grimy in like such a short amount of time.
I love it. Yeah. I think it's so fun. I think it's so well. I wanted to hear both of your perspective because, as I said, while I respect and understand that there's a lot of different versions, I think the key, and as you both mentioned, is let's just take some deep breaths and let's see what happens. And then if it's terrible, then we can really pile on and have some fun with that. But in the meantime, let's just enjoy this process. To me, the anticipation is so much fun anyway. So we're going to go ahead and take our first break. And when we return, we will talk with Jason a little bit more about writing Star Wars fiction. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Coffee with Kenobi. Oh, pass the cream, would you?
Coffee with Kenobi is sponsored by the Star Wars digital card trader collecting app from Topps. If you love Star Wars and love the excitement of chasing your favorite Star Wars collectibles, the Star Wars digital card trader collecting app from Topps is for you. Download the free app from iTunes or Google Play and collect your favorite images from the classic 1977 Star Wars cards to the Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, The Force Awakens, Rogue One, The Last Jedi, and much more. Collect and trade with friends new and old through the Star Wars digital card trader collecting app from Topps. These are the cards you're looking for. Before we get on with the show, I want to thank our Patreon contributors who have done so much for our Coffee with Kenobi family, and I'm talking about people like Ben Elkington, Terry Lee, Dennis Keithley, Aaron Harris, Angela Souse, Mediocre Jedi, Tyler Wiggins, Christo Hayting, Christian Dale, Jason Hall, Brian McKinney, Connie Shee, Mike Audette, Jared Cantor, BJ Smith, Eric Struthers, Nick Deco, Mark Suter, and so many more. What Patreon does is it helps contributors, and for Coffee with Kenobi, what that means is you help us with the audio equipment, all the things we're doing with our YouTube channel now, travel that we try to do to bring you conversation from all around the world, and it's just been so helpful because of each of you. And there are things that you get out of this as well. For $5 or more a month, you get recognition from me at the start of the show, just like you just heard, and we will follow you from CWK on Twitter. $10 or more a month, you get access to our Discord page, which has this awesome app, and you can get notifications when there's breaking news or someone has a Star Wars thing they want to talk about. We'll all find out about it right away, courtesy of our mobile phones, and then we can have that conversation right away. There's also coffee mugs, T-shirts, host a show with me once, twice, or 4 times in 1 month. There's a lot that goes into it. And Patreon has a brand new thing called Lens, and what it basically is sort of like InstaStory, but it's just for Patreon members. And for example, the other day, I showed pictures of my studio and a little bit of me talking on a video about an upcoming show. There are just different things I can do, different ways I can communicate with you and show you behind the scenes and special stuff that only you will get access to. So if you want to help out the show and be even more ensconced in Coffee with Kenobi and what we do here for our little show, go ahead and check out the Patreon page on our website or via the show notes. Thank you so very much. we are back, and while we have Jason on the show today, we have to ask you, Jason, a little bit about this kind of writing in general. I mean, you have written over 40 books set in the Star Wars galaxy, which is amazing, and you've got that awesome young adult series of Jupiter Pirates. So as an English teacher and as a Star Wars fan, I'm excited to kind of pick your brain about this.
Sure, pick away.
So first thing I want to ask you about is, how did you first discover a love of writing?
Oh, goodness, that goes all the way back. As early as I can remember, I love telling stories, really in whatever form it could be. I would write poems, I would write fiction, I would draw. I had put a whole bunch of drawings together, kind of, like little kid storyboarding almost. I was even the horrible kid everybody hated in the class because I was actually perfectly happy to write paper because then I could explain stuff. My mother worked for the State University of New York at Stony-Brook when I was a kid, and she would bring home, I don't know if these exist anymore, these kind of blue square exam books with like 16 pages each in them. That used to be for finals. They do? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
She'd bring home stacks of those, and I would just, I would start writing some kind of epic story in these little books, and I generally, get through like 12, 13 of them, and then it would kind of peter out. But just as long as I can remember, if you give me a pen and some paper, or now a keyboard and a chance to tell a story, I've been happy.
Which is neat. And writing definitely is, and obviously, Lindsey, you can speak to this as well. Writing is something that I think for many people, over the years, my students said, I see so many of them that they first tell me right away, I'm not a good writer, or I don't like to write, or something to that effect. And then by the end of the course or the semester, they may not all love it, which is fine, but they're starting to realize that there's more to it than just telling yourself you can't do it. There's a lot that goes into writing. And it really is a great process, just sort of metacognitive approach to thinking about how you think. And when you write, you can explain things in such different ways. And I just think it's a great sign of just evaluating your thought process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's, like you were saying, I think for people who are natural writers, it's a little bit different. You do kind of attack every different poetry, fiction, nonfiction, whatever. But I think I felt the same way in high school. You would see someone who said they weren't a good writer, all of a sudden realize like, hey, I actually love to write poetry or something. So yeah, there's always different avenues into writing for people. Absolutely.
Poetry to me, and Jason, feel free to weigh in on this, to me, poetry is the hardest thing to write.
That's interesting. I think, it's funny. One thing I think trips up a lot of people, goodness knows it trips me up. I think it trips up people who don't feel as comfortable writing, is there's a feeling like from your brain or your mouth to the page, something goes missing. Something doesn't come out the way you intended it to be. And whether we're natural writers or not, we can get very censorious and very insecure about that. And I mean, a lot of people I know who don't feel like they're natural writers are perfectly terrific storytellers and conversationalists. And and I often find they can be helped by just kind of get that inner critic out of the way and kind of speak onto the page and then go from there. But the reason I thought of this when you mentioned poetry is I think poetry is even harder in that respect to kind of turn off that inner critic, because there's such a gap between kind of the perfect thing you have in your head and what finally comes out. But I mean, one thing I counsel myself on, and other writers too, is that perfect idea in your head, you're the only one who has any idea it's out there. And, you're competing with something that's the only place it exists, and you're never going to win that battle. And so I always try to just concede that fight and then move along.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the reason I even brought up poetry is I had a college professor in a creative writing class I took, and he has us write a unit of poetry. We weren't allowed to write a single rhyme in any poem or he was going to flunk us. So that became a very interesting challenge in writing poetry, but it makes you be descriptive, right? And one of the things that's so great about Star Wars, and I think in Star Wars literature, is there's a lot of wonderful description out there. And Jason, you're among the tops in that, which is why I'm so excited about your future project, which we will get to read very soon. But how did Star Wars and writing first kind of combine for you?
Yeah, that's an easy one. It was May 1977. I was 8 years old, and everybody was going to see Star Wars. And it was one of those. It was odd as a kid because there's always plenty of stuff kids are interested, but this was suddenly like everybody's mom and dad were talking about Star Wars, and the guy at the hardware store was talking about Star Wars. It was like, what is going on? And so I finally got to go, and Princess Leia's ship goes over on the big screen, and I was like, that's kind of cool. And then Darth Vader's ship starts going across the screen and keeps going and going and going. And by the time I saw the engines of that ship, my life was different. I'd always been interested in telling stories, but it had never occurred to me that stories could be like that they could be fast-paced and fun and exciting, but at the same time have these depths to them, that they were drawing on bigger themes and myths and stuff like that. And which is not to say that, sitting there in the audience as an 8-year-old kid, I got all that. I certainly didn't. But on some level, it was kind of working in my brain. And it just kind of exploded my kind of horizons of storytelling. And I, went home and I'm sure got a bunch of blue books and tore into something and just kind of kept going.
Do you remember sort of the overall vibe the very first time you found out you were going to write an actual Star Wars story?
Oh, yeah. Oh, goodness me. No, I couldn't believe it. Whether it was doing RPG stuff back for Wizards of the Coast or, getting to do Clone Wars visual guide or writing fiction. It's just, this was such an amazing sandbox created by George Lucas and then with so many talented writers to play in. And, as a reader, as a fan, I had derived so much joy from that the idea of getting to actually contribute myself was just, I was almost speechless. I couldn't believe I get to do it. And I still feel that way. I still can't believe I get to do this. It's an honor and a privilege and also just an enormous amount of fun.
Oh, and it shows too. And especially when we consider, you've written novels, you've written short stories, and then you've got the verisimilitude of the cross-section books. What's kind of the difference in your approach when you look at those two different types?
You're always thinking about the story. That's a huge value of Lucasfilm. It's, one of the number one commandments of Disney, and it's right there in things like story group. It's story, story, story. And so you're always thinking about the story, and then it just becomes a little different depending on what you're doing. Straight fiction, there's one way to approach it. Something like a novelization or an adaptation of TV episodes is a different way. And then for a book like, say, Incredible Cross-Sections, that's kind of a different way still. In that case, you're kind of supporting the story rather than writing it directly. You're kind of adding supporting material that lets people enjoy things more, go deeper, see connections, etc. But it's always about, what is the story we're directly telling or that we're supporting, and how can you follow that? And if you're getting too far away from that, then something's going wrong and you need to readjust a little bit.
Right. That makes sense. Story, obviously that, and George, I believe, has talked about that quite a bit too. It's all about the story.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, Star Wars world building is amazing. I've had a blast doing that, but I'm kind of a convert to this through Jupiter Pirates and other things, but the world building is there to support the story. And you always think about it that way. And when you lose sight of that, you wind up going down some rabbit holes that, they kind of narrow and becomes a smaller and smaller slice of the audience. So always thinking about that, and often, in my case, trying to, bring myself back a little bit from going too far down into those, wonderful kind of lore burrows, if you will. Sure.
Well, and also kind of spotlights. We kept talking about things in the last segment about things being precious. I can't help but think about Tolkien when I think about the word precious. And he was a master storyteller and a linguist, and he, did the world building in just incredible ways with the maps and creating language. And I feel like we see sort of the pedigree of that, kind of trickle down through Lucas and other Star Wars authors as well, just to the importance of creating this real fictional universe and things come to life through that.
Yeah, I mean, Tolkien is the shadow over all such things. I mean, the kind of all world building really, I feel, stems from him. And I mean, you know, the Essential Atlas, for instance, that I wrote with my pal Dan Wallace. I mean, the origins of that come from reading the Atlas of Middle Earth back when I was a kid. And I was just amazed by that book and wanted to do it. I wanted to do something like that for Star Wars, which, you know, then they can kind of realize it was a little harder because you're literally talking about kind of dots and lines instead of continents, but we made it work. But the thing that I think is the cautionary tale, though, is, I mean, Tolkien is so unique in that, you know, he really essentially invented a bunch of languages and then wanted stories to tell as a test bed for the languages. That's oversimplifying a little, but not too much. And, you know, he pulled it off because he's Tolkien, but I think it's a trap for a lot of other writers. And I think of world building like matte paint. It's like, you know, you want to make a photorealistic image of what's directly behind the action. But what's happening kind of 3 inches away from the action may be really interesting, but that's not where the effort should be while you're telling the story. And if you want to explore something, you know, a few inches off to the side later, the best way to do that is to put a story in front of it.
I really like that matte painting comparison too. I mean, because they're both artistic. Well, speaking of things that are artistic and beautiful, recently on the Star Wars show, we were fortunate to get a glimpse of your new project that will be out very, very soon. And I'm not going to ask you about that. We'll wait until after the book comes out, and then I can't wait to pick your brain about it. But in the meantime, Jason, Skywalker Ranch. Now, I've been lucky to go to Lucasfilm a number of times. I've been to Ranch Obi-Wan, but Skywalker Ranch, that's kind of the ultimate cherry on top of the Star Wars Sundae. What is that like? Oh,
it's an amazing place. It's unbelievably beautiful in the setting. It's perfectly cared for, everything from how the roads work to the houses to, I mean, I never really got to see, you know, editing studios or anything like that, but I can just tell it's really, you get a little dreamy about it because it's really just the ideal environment that if you're a writer or a director or any kind of creative person, you've always kind of, I think, dreamed is out there, but, you know, you assumed it didn't exist. Well, it does. It's Skywalker Ranch. The funny thing for me was that for years when people would find out that I wrote Star Wars stuff, they would have 2 questions. The first one was, have you ever met George Lucas? And I'd be like, no. And they would look kind of disappointed. And then the second question would be, have you ever been to Skywalker Ranch? And I'd be like, no. And then they'd look really disappointed and go talk to somebody else because this is completely pointless. So I'm really excited that at least I could say yes about the second one now. And I know what a big Star Wars fan you are too, so it was just really cool for me to see you getting that experience. Yeah, oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it was one of, Star Wars is filled with pinch me moments, but that was a big one. There was a lot of pinching. And we're going to take another break. When we come back, Tom will join us to bring us the latest Star Wars news. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
Greetings. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Let me give you a task. Pick out a wine that you're going to love, but there is a catch. It has to be one you haven't had before. Now, where would you start? Introducing Wink, spelled W-I-N-C. Wink's name actually comes from the combination of wine plus incorporated, so you have wine plus ink equals Wink. Wink makes it easy to discover a great wine because Wink's wine experts select wines matched to your taste, personalized for you, and shipped right to your door, starting at just $13 a bottle. Wink makes exploring new wines fun and easy with delicious wine based on your taste delivered right to your doorstep every single month. There's really nothing like that first time you come home to a box of 4 bottles of wine selected just for you. All you have to do is you fill out Wink's palate profile quiz. You'll answer simple questions like, how do you take your coffee? How do you feel about blueberries? Things like that. And then Wink will send wines curated to your tastes. The more wines you rate, the more personalized your monthly selections. And each month there are new, delicious wines like the insanely popular Summer Water Rosé. There are no membership fees. You can skip any month and you can cancel anytime. Plus, shipping is covered. And if you don't like a bottle they send you, they will replace it with a bottle you love. No questions asked. With online ordering, quick shipping, and personalized recommendations, Wink makes discovering wine really, really easy, and you're going to love it. You're also going to love the Wink Journal, which is included with every wine each month. It gives you recipes to pair with your wines, info about the selections curated for you, and it has a great design, making it perfect for the coffee table. It's really, really easy to go to a store and settle for the same old bottle of wine that you like, and it leaves you kind of but it's so much easier to let Wink ship wine right to your door that is perfectly matched for you. So sit back and relax or celebrate with your glass. You have finally discovered the best way to find new wines that you'll love with Wink. Discover great wine today. Go to trywink.com/CWK family and you'll get $20 off your first shipment. That's trywink.com/CWK family, all one word, for $20 off. Trywink.com/CWK family.
The Star Wars Digital Card Trader collecting app features incredible images from many aspects of the saga, including the original trilogy, the prequels, the Clone Wars, Rebels, The Force Awakens, and Rogue One. It's the quality you have come to expect from Topps. It's also easy to get into and really fun, too. Your favorite Star Wars characters, scenes, and moments are in every pack. To get started, download the app for free from iTunes or Google Play, and then be sure to open the app each day for free credits to spend on card packs from the Cantina. Plus, if you can't get what you're looking for, there's a place to trade with your friends as you complete your Star Wars collection. And if you're an experienced collector, there are exclusive cards, special inserts, and autograph opportunities for you to enjoy. Don't worry about missing the cards and sets you want either, as you can sign up for notifications right on the app. The Star Wars Digital Card Trader collecting app from Topps can be downloaded for free from iTunes or Google Play. Be sure to download the app and start your collection today. The Star Wars Digital Card Trader collecting app from Topps is available now. And remember, these are the cards you're looking for.
We're back, and it is time to look at some Star Wars news. Tom, there should be plenty for you to share with us today, I would sure think.
Indeed, there is. We open with news from the D23 Expo in Japan, where Disney Parks and Resorts Director Bob Chapek had some exciting news from the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge experience. He announced that the Star Wars-themed hotel will be seamlessly connected to Galaxy's Edge. Guests will be immersed in the experience from the moment they arrive as they board a starship and depart on their multi-day Star Wars adventure. Chapek also shared that there will be 2 attractions that let guests control their experiences at Galaxy's Edge. One is that guests will be able to board a Star Destroyer and experience a battle between the First Order and the Resistance. And second, they will be able to fly the Millennium Falcon. I'm sold. While there is not a date for the opening of Galaxy's Edge, flying the Falcon might just be enough to get me to take a trip to Orlando.
And you are not a crowd person. I know this.
I am not, but the Falcon.
I know. I mean, what can you say? I mean, I know Jason and I have talked about the Falcon a lot. The fact that knowing that I'm going to get to walk into Disney World, which is my favorite place anyway, and see a life-sized Millennium Falcon that I can go on and conceivably fly, I'm going to start walking to Disney World as soon as we're done with the show so I can get there in time.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit scary though, right? Am I right? Like, so. Not in a bad way. I'm a little bit afraid of like VR. That kind of stuff really trips me out because it's like too real. So it sounds exciting, but also a little bit terrifying.
Well, I don't know if you've been to Animal Kingdom, but their Avatar ride, Flight of the Banshee, is extremely realistic, and it's very much a VR thing. And if it's anything like that, it's going to be transcendent. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
Jason, have you been to Animal Kingdom?
I have. I haven't done the Avatar ride, though. I'm excited. I will say the thing that kind of unlocked this for me is in Hollywood Studios. I did a bunch of signings there for Star Wars weekends, which was really fun.
Yeah.
And in my off hours, I would always go to the Tower of Terror. And
the best ride.
I know, isn't it? the weird thing was that I was always disappointed when there was no line, because I like hanging out in the lobby and looking at all the set dressing, like down to the letters for guests and the boxes, and just how just perfectly detailed everything was. And so when I first heard about Galaxy's Edge, I was like, yeah, it's Star Wars, but with that level of Imagineering applied to it. And yeah, I felt the same way. Yeah. You did. I was like, I'll just start walking now. I'm so good.
And when you know too that the people who created the Harry Potter, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter for Universal Studios, they're the ones that are working on this. I mean, that is just, that brings up to 11, to quote Spinal Tap. I mean, it's going to be remarkable. It really, really is. And then knowing, and Jim Hill talked to us about this, Disney Insider Jim Hill, on a previous Coffee with Kenobi, but he had mentioned that he thought that the theme park would be connected to the Star Wars resort. And now knowing that is actually a thing that they're officially saying, my goodness.
It's so exciting to hear all of this. And we've talked about this before on the show, Dan, how, the movies are the movies and the stories are the stories, but these are opportunities that we have today to create it's not our own Star Wars story, but it kind of is. It personalizes it. And one thing that I have a visualization issue trying to picture like what this resort's going to be like and how this is all going to tie together and make me feel like I'm a part of Star Wars. But it was a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the Secrets of Empire, hyperreality, and we actually got to see, on the Star Wars show what that's going to look like. And once I get a picture like that, I have no doubt I'm going to be blown away. And it's going to be one of those things where I say, I hope someday. Well, we'll move to other news from the D23 Expo in Japan. Episode 9 director J.J. Abrams confirmed that filming for the final episode will begin this summer of 2018. He also noted that he and Chris Terrio are about halfway through the writing of the screenplay, and episode 9 is set to release December 20th of 2019.
Isn't it wonderful to know that we're that close to them filming another segment in the Skywalker saga? That's about the only thing that makes me trepidatious about all these new films and stories that are going to come out, is that I mean, obviously don't know what's going to happen in episode 9. JJ doesn't even know what's going to happen in episode 9, but I'm gonna miss.
He's halfway there.
Yeah, that's true. Living on a prayer. It's interesting that there's not going to be conceivably any more Skywalker stories, and that makes me a little melancholy. Although I felt that way in 1983, and then again back in 2005. So who knows?
I know, that is kind of crazy. I mean, I know that was some of the complaints with the last one. Like, if Rey's not a Skywalker, what does that mean for the future of the Skywalker things? I feel like there's still a way it could continue, but
well, sure. Yeah. There's a really good article on IGN about Rey and the cave and stuff like that. You should check out.
Mm-hmm. I hadn't heard.
I only mention to him every day. We work together at the same school.
We do. Yeah, and I'm sure, Jason, you can speak to this, but one thing this story says to me is, the machine keeps rolling on. And so I'm sure in the book world, the same feeling is happening. Is that right?
Yeah, but I mean, I kind of flash back to Rogue One, where Rogue One arrived, and one of the complaints was, we really like Jyn and Cassian and K2 and Baze and Chirrut, but, they're gone. So we're, spoiler for anyone who's really late, but spoiler, they're gone. And, so there's no way to have further adventures of those characters. But, that was a reaction that came within a couple of weeks. And, as long as Star Wars storytellers on film or in books or whatever continue making great characters, then, no, it's true. We'll probably never quite have the same reaction like we did to Luke and Han and Leia, but that's because they were first. But, there will be new characters we love and new further adventures to follow. I mean, new Ahsokas and new Thrawns and new Jyn Ersos and new Reys and Fens, and it'll be great. I just can't wait.
Totally true. I mean, another example would be like, when Seinfeld was over, I thought, oh no, what am I going to do? Seinfeld was my favorite. And then I got to see Curb Your Enthusiasm. I mean, the stories continue in their own way.
I think Rey and Finn and Poe are they're such beloved characters already too, that like, I think people love them enough that if the episodes continue with just them as the new pioneers of everything, I think it will be kind of similar to the same way people feel about the Skywalkers. So
I do too.
That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and one thing I love about Star Wars is it's endlessly self-renewing. And, I'm a original trilogy kid, whatever that means, but, the prequel kids are grown up and have their own kids. And, my son came in at Clone Wars and was really happy to have, Star Wars stories where he started on the same footing as everybody else. And, there will be sequel trilogy kids, and on we go. And I think that's great. It's great for everyone to get, quote, their Star Wars as an entry point, and then take that point and explore everything else.
Absolutely. That's a fun thing as an educator as well, that every couple of years, it feels like there's a new generation there's a certain story they have gravitated towards. When I first started teaching, it was the prequel trilogy. Everyone loved The Phantom Menace, and they thought Jar Jar was really, really funny. And then I watch it with my kids who are teenagers now, and they still laugh at Jar Jar. And that just makes me very happy, because the genius of George Lucas is that he's able to reinvent Star Wars, and now new creators are reinventing Star Wars continually while still maintaining that magic and that wonder that we have.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, let's move to the last story of this week. Speaking of news stories, this week Entertainment Weekly released an interview with a Star Wars story director Ron Howard. In the interview, Howard discusses the respect he has for George Lucas and his past, and reveals that Lucas visited the set on his first day. Howard recalls that Lucas told him to trust his instincts and gave him a final bit of advice to just enjoy this. Now, according to Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy, who was on set that day as well, Lucas was just going to stay for a short while, but it seemed that the fun just couldn't stop. So that short while turned into about 5 hours on set. At one point during a scene being shot on the Millennium Falcon, Kennedy recalls Lucas saying to Howard, "Hey, why doesn't Han just do this?" And Howard said, "Oh, that's a great idea." Ran onto the set and said, "George wants us to do this." Well, the article also discusses Howard's history with Lucas and the difficult decision to pick up the film from departing directors Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
I mean, we don't know yet what that gag is going to be or seen as, and obviously we will at the end of May. But this makes me very, very happy. I just think it's just wonderful, even knowing that he's just got his fingerprints on anything that's still going on with Star Wars. And of course, there are a lot of his ideas that are reverberating throughout Rebels and other areas, I'm sure. But this is wonderful, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. We're all going to lose our minds about what that was, and we don't know. Maybe it's the scene that doesn't even make it to the screen. What really interests me is the kind of the two directors sitting there, and that's a really interesting dynamic as well as. But though I do have to admit, being a Star Wars director and having George Lucas sitting on set, that would be a little nerve-wracking, even under the best conditions.
I know.
It would have to be. Yeah. Like having Shakespeare. Didn't Richard Marquand say that when he was filming Jedi, whenever Lucas would show up, it would feel like Shakespeare was there? I believe that was from the making of. Yeah, from Rensler. I think that was in Rensler's making of Jedi book.
Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right, Jason, about we're all going to be racking our brains as to what it was. And I love in the story, the Entertainment Weekly story, Kennedy mentions that she just can't remember the scene, and about all she remembers is it was on the Falcon and it was a little humorous quip. So she wanted to make sure to leave us all hanging on what that would be. And what a great way to, it just extends the Lucas mythology, and it's like Stan Lee showing up in a Marvel movie. It's just like such a hand to the past.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. That's fun. We're gonna have a lot of fun, like you said, Jason, kind of pouring over that and enjoying that moment, as well as everything that's going to be happening as we get to enjoy more of this hype. Well, hey, Tom, thanks for bringing us the latest Star Wars news.
You bet. My pleasure.
Let's go ahead and take another break, and when we come back, we're going to look again at the Solo trailer and why it looks and feels so much like Star Wars. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
Coffee, tea, or Coffee with Kenobi.
Coffee with Kenobi was sponsored by the Star Wars digital card trader collecting app from Topps. If you love Star Wars and love the excitement of chasing your favorite Star Wars collectibles, the Star Wars digital card trader collecting app from Topps is for you. Download the free app from iTunes or Google Play and collect your favorite images from the classic 1977 Star Wars cards to the Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, The Force Awakens, Rogue One, and now The Last Jedi. Collect and trade with friends new and old through the Star Wars digital card trader collecting app from Topps. These are the cards you're looking for. We're back, and it is coffee chat time. And while I'm coming up with topics, I try to come up with topics that will be well suited to our guests. And Jason and Lindsey, I could talk about anything Star Wars with you, and I think it would be fascinating. But I want to look again at the Solo trailer because that's so hot in everybody's minds and hearts. And there have been, of course, different observations about it, various degrees of different things that people are noticing. And to me, this trailer, albeit we've only seen a very small segment of the film, it's just got a beautiful vibe to it that looks very unlike anything. I don't even think it looks like Rogue One, because I think even the way that it's lit, I think that it looks like something from the late 70s, quite honestly. And I think that is just one of many reasons why this trailer feels like Star Wars. But Jason, I want to throw it to you first. What about this speaks to you as, oh, this is a Star Wars film? And I don't mean the obvious things, of course, like Chewie and the Falcon.
Well, actually, I mean, one of them is pretty obvious, but I think it's a testament to how effective it is. Like, I mean, the scene is going into hyperspace.
Mm.
You know, I mean, how many times have I seen a ship go into hyperspace in my life? I mean, we got to be in the thousands by now. Watching the movies as many times as I have, but still, your heart kind of goes up in your throat. Like, oh my God, we're going into hyperspace! How cool is that? So I love that, and that little kind of secret handshake or whatever the droid and Lando were doing.
I love that.
Just kills me, I just can't wait. And actually, what we were talking about earlier, like, the scene with Han talking out of the ship. I don't know. It felt very Harrison Ford to me, actually. I could not in a imitation way, but I can see young Han, as one of you said earlier, starting to figure it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was very excited to see the trailer. I was pretty amped up afterward.
Oh, me too. And that music, I think, is very much like kind of feels like the Hans Zimmer Dark Knight score a little bit too. And I don't know if that will be something that will be is just something for the trailer or what, but that certainly resonated as well. Now, Lindsey, you mentioned, and of course I knew this anyway, but you've written about the trailer extensively. What about this trailer for you says this is a Star Wars film? This feels like Star Wars to me.
I think the compliments of it, to be completely honest, like, I think you watch it, and this is a movie that it doesn't beat you over the head with the fact that it's a Han Solo movie. It's not like, I don't know. I think Star Wars, the new iteration of Star Wars, has really established a brand for itself, separate from maybe the original trilogy and other stuff. And so when you watch it, it feels, you could, without even knowing that it's a Han Solo movie, you would know it's a Star Wars movie. And I think that there's a certain amount of confidence there, which to me is very evident. So I don't know if you guys feel that way, but
confidence is a really good buzzword for this, because Solo, I mean, he has a confidence, but he's also got a vulnerability about him. And I think we see that when I believe her name is Kira, right? Kira, that's the...
Kira.
Yeah, Kira. Yeah. When she says, I'm the one who really knows what you're all about, or so, I don't know the exact line, of course. And he says, "What's that?" And he kind of smiles, and he has almost like a twitch that Aaron Reich does as Solo. And I think that's, again, is sort of this burgeoning confidence that we see. It maybe is compensating for some sort of doubt or uncertainty about maybe where his place is in the galaxy. And when we think about how his arc plays out, that makes a lot of sense too, considering that he has a hard time sort of putting roots down. And we see that in, the novel Bloodline, for example, things of that nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Lindsey nailed it. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, confidence. You feel like you're in good hands here, and that's obviously really reassuring as a fan. I mean, it's just a trailer, but it was great to feel that way. Yeah, confidence. That's absolutely it. That's awesome.
That's good. You should be a writer, Lindsey. That's good stuff.
Oh wow.
Well, and then you've got that great shot. You've got that great shot of him. We sort of unsnapping the holster. It looks like there's going to be a bit of a showdown. That Old West vibe to it, which I think is nice. I want to shift gears a little bit. We talked about in the first segment the Alden Ehrenreich concerns that some people have. Why do you think there's no concerns about Donald Glover as Lando?
I think there's a confidence in him, maybe because he's a more established actor. Also, just that Alden Ehrenreich, not that he's not proven himself, but I think Donald Glover has extra proven himself. He's been out there enough to be like, okay, we know that this guy knows what's up, so he'll probably be fine. Alden Ehrenreich is a little bit more of a wild card.
Yeah, which is
perfect. Some Community. Yeah, Atlanta. I think people just know him. Childish Gambino. He's just got enough of a presence already that you just know that even if he's not super Lando-y, you know that he'll be good on his own. So I think that gives people sort of a confidence, maybe, that if you haven't seen Hail Caesar, you might not have the same for Alden Ehrenreich.
Right.
Yeah, I shouldn't confess this, but I'm such a pop culture loser. I didn't know who Donald Glover was. And I was like, wow, people I really respect are super excited. That's awesome, but I don't get it. It was the same thing when they announced JJ for Force Awakens. There were a million lens flare jokes.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, I was like, why is that funny? And then I was like, somebody explained it to me very patiently. And then I was like, what's a lens flare? And at that point, they were like, oh, God, forget it. You're just completely helpless. Why do we let you do anything? But there we were. But, yeah, but I don't know. Since then, I read the Esquire profile, and sounds like an awesome dude. I'll check out more of this stuff. So.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he's definitely got that style that we of course attribute to Billy D, for sure.
Sorry, I was going to say in that the Super Bowl teaser, when you see him in kind of that fur coat with the smirk, it was so Lando. I know it wasn't physically like Billy D, but it was just, I don't know. I had the most confidence in him after that, just seeing that, because I was like, yeah, that's, even if you don't look exactly like him, you've got the swagger and the feel.
Poise.
So yeah, the poise, everything. Yeah.
Very much so. And of course, you feel like there's that callback to American Graffiti at the beginning of the trailer as well, which of course that's not necessarily Star Wars, but it's certainly George Lucas.
Wait, what was it? I don't know if I caught that.
Well, it's just when he is driving that sort of hot rod, and he turns around to look, and then, or one of the many scenes with him driving that car.
Right. All the yeah. No, that makes sense now. I missed it before.
It's pretty slick.
Yeah, I mean, I know this isn't a come down from it or anything, even if it might sound like it, but I did get the sense right away that it's trying to be a little bit Rogue One-y. I don't think it's exactly in the same, I don't think it's trying to emulate it or anything, but I think the visualization and everything kind of immediately just reminded me of Rogue One, and I know it's in kind of the same era. And so to me, I thought that was a positive. It's we're trying to associate ourselves with this other film that was kind of the same time for a continuity reason. And so that to me just shows that they're kind of trying to put everything in the same timeline, and being very aware of this is how the Empire was then, so we have to make it seem like it's a part of the same thing. So that was part of the confidence thing I was going with before too.
Interestingly enough, I think one of the reasons I liked it so much is, at least to me, it didn't feel like Rogue One at all. I think it's fascinating that you had that perspective.
Yeah.
I totally get what you're saying, but I don't know. I just felt like it
just visually.
Yeah, sure.
Visually, to me, I don't know that actual content wise, it's Rogue One, but I just think the filters and everything to me just as soon as I watched it, I was not expecting it to look anything like that film.
Cinematography
and the fact, yeah, exactly. That's all I mean.
Let's go ahead and take our last break. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are the podcast you're looking for. This is.
Before we get to email, I want to thank our CWK sponsors, Wink, Harry's Razors, and the Star Wars Digital Card Trader Collecting app from Topps. Please support them the way they support our podcast, and remember to listen to new and archive shows of Coffee with Kenobi wherever you listen to podcasts, including iTunes, Podcast Addict, Stitcher, Spreaker, Overcast, Blog Talk Radio, Player FM, or our website, www.coffeewithkenobi.com. And if you listen to the show through iTunes, please leave us a review. We are also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and Tumblr, and we'd love for you to check us out there. Be sure to listen to our CWK family of shows too, including Legends Library, Rose Reactions, Comics with Kenobi, and Lattes with Leia. Please leave a review for each of their shows as well, and be sure to subscribe to each of them individually, as they all have their own iTunes feeds now. A big thank you to Jason Fry and Lindsey Romain for joining us today. Where can listeners find each of you and your contributions to Star Wars fandom?
On Twitter, you can look for me at Jason C. Fry. So I cannot tell you anything about the novelization until March. Sorry. And I also have Jason Fry's Dorkery on Tumblr, which is things longer than 280 characters. So come drop by, and I also do shows and book signings. So if you're in the neighborhood, come around live and in the flesh, and we'll talk Star Wars and geek out.
You can find me on Twitter at Lindsey Romain, Lindsey with an E, not an A, and Romain without an E, so at the end. And then I write for a bunch of different places, but if you follow me on Twitter, you can see it all. So.
Awesome, and I will put links to all of these things in the show notes, and I want to thank each and every one of you for listening to and supporting Coffee with Kenobi and for contributing to Star Wars Conversation. We will be back next week with 2 new co-hosts and more Star Wars discussion. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along.